Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, producer of the No Quitting the Home Team podcast. I wanted to give a quick disclaimer in that while we hope anyone who listens would gain wisdom and insight from Dave and Renee's conversations, this is still a podcast intended for married couples, and to that end there will occasionally be dialogue around sexual intimacy and other related topics. So, for those of you who may be single and particularly sensitive to this subject matter, or those who may be listening at home or in the car with their kids around, we wanted to give you a heads up in advance so that you might continue listening at your own discretion.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 12. 12. We've done this 12 times.
Let's do it.
Of No Quitting the Home Team. I'm Renee.
I'm Dave.
I'm Jesse.
And we are thrilled that you joined us for another, but this actually really isn't technically a marriage book. Right?
It is, well,
it's not classified as a marriage book. I think it's more classified as a self-help book.
It's related to divvying up domestic tasks. Mm-hmm. And the context is almost always in marriage, but not always.
Right.
So, yeah.
And anyway. But I don't think, if you look at it on Amazon, it's in the marriage book category.
It isn't in the marriage book? Interesting.
I think it's self-help. Anywho. How's everybody doing? Do you want to give another little plug before we...
Sure. This book will either foster resentment in your relationship, or it can empower partnership. So
it's interesting because I don't think every time I've asked you about it, your perspective has been very negative. And
empowering partnership, that's not negative.
Yeah, but just off books, when I've asked you certain things, you seem to have a negative tone when you refer to it. And I think I'm going to make an extreme statement. I think if we would have done something like this 20 years ago, we would have eliminated 90% of our conflict.
How about that?
So.
Bold. Big if true.
I suppose the negative part, like the reason why I am almost automatically defensive.
Is because of that?
Well, no, is because anytime I feel like, start off this is why this isn't a marriage philosophy book. Mm-hmm. It's dealing with an issue that's in marriages
that could be said is one of the most cited reason for marital conflict. Certainly anecdotally, people I know, friends of mine,
when you do like the prepare and enrich stuff in marriage enrichment, it's always a huge feature is how do you divvy up task within and living together. It's a huge feature. So it is giant. However, right before we met to do this podcast, I was doing marriage counseling with a couple, and they asked what we were going to do for the podcast today. And I just gave them the description of this book, and it was fascinating to see her look at him with that look. Immediately, they got into a fight. And this is a couple they're uber competent, and it was fascinating how like tension immediately welled up. And now that tension is there because the author of this book, I think, has done an incredible service to highlight not just a generational, something that's always been disproportionate in relationships between husbands and wives historically. Well, she's put her finger on it, and she's given a voice to it, and I think that's really powerful, which is why I think dealing with it is critical.
Yeah. Well, and I think historically and cross-culturally, of course, women have often shouldered the domestic load.
Right.
But then as society has changed, I think that was a poignant point of hers. As society has changed and more dual income, more women are working too. That hasn't all of a sudden, it's remained on their shoulders for some reason.
That's where the accidental traditionalist
Yes.
sort of emerges. She's like, I thought, once I went back into the workforce, some of these household tasks would get alleviated, and my husband just assumes I'm going to keep doing all
Right,
those.
right. Anyway, we're getting too much into the book. One can probably ascertain this. It's going to be a spicy conversation.
Yes.
How are you? How is everyone? We're going to go there first.
I'm doing good. I'm excited to spend some time with you this weekend, and looking forward to tonight. After we're doing a thing for our boys' high school, we're hosting this forum thing, and that's going to be fine. But I'm really looking forward to after that.
I do have group tonight. Sorry.
I'm looking forward to seeing you
At midnight.
At midnight tonight. We're gonna have some great quality time together. But then we have Friday, so I am really looking forward.
Today may be a relational wash.
That's fine. That's fine. But we're in good partnership in it, so
Yep.
I'm actually feeling pretty good. Continuing the craziest month of our year, work wise, and that continues. But it's good. I'm actually feeling really buoyant right now. Nay, Jesse, how are you? The two of you?
I'm okay. I mean, I feel like we're on the treadmill at what's a 7.8? Yeah, about a 7.8 on the treadmill.
Yeah,
that's a pretty
you
good
can
clip.
do a 7.8. If I do 7.8, it rockets me off the treadmill. For the record, anything above a 5.5, and I'm done.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like I'm at a 7.8 on the treadmill, but not terrible.
Good.
Yeah.
It doesn't care to elaborate, or
No, I think just rocking along. Sometimes you just feel like you're rocking along.
well, you guys seem to have at least more buoyancy than you did last week. Last week,
That's true.
no, I think you guys had also kind of stumbled into last week as well. I think there's a little bit more tension last week, but at least you're feeling. It sounds like you're feeling a little more unified.
Yeah.
This whole section last week was pretty dour.
Yeah. Well, is it? I mean, I think we are unified. I think a word that Renee used yesterday is resigned.
Even still,
but
you can be unified in your resignation.
there you go. We work together.
I guess it's better than
We're
being
together in
divided
this.
in our resignation.
Yes.
True.
We have our kids have a lot going on, and there's some huge deadlines due this week, and I feel uneasy about the competence of said college applications that are being submitted. So, I mean, you do you, little man. I don't know. We've tried to read things, and he's been super cagey about letting us look at applications, even just to check for misplaced commas, and
He just wants to do it himself.
he wants to do it himself.
He
Which,
wants an accurate representation.
yes, so
Yeah.
I get that impulse.
yeah.
I also understand wanting to be like, but if you just let me edit the essay,
Yes.
then I could talk to you about why we made those decisions, and then it's not an unfair representation
Yeah.
at
Yes.
all.
Well,
Yes.
I had a meeting yesterday with a former student who I've graded his essays and engaged with him in kind of pretty high level academic graduate level work. He's asking about said college essays my kid is writing right now. He's like, so, how much are you helping him? I'm assuming you're reading all this and giving them written feedback. I'm like, I get nothing.
He won't let us.
He's like, does he know that part of this is what you do for a living? I was like, no.
We're parents.
He doesn't care.
We're parents. We know nothing. Parents know nothing.
It's true.
When you have an 18-year-old, you know nothing.
You know what he wants us to. We know what he wants us to know of him right now.
Yes.
But all that to say, it's actually
it's
done
good.
Great. He's incredible. He's done great.
Yeah, well, time will tell how incredible he
True.
did. So that's me. How about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I feel like we were on the upswing, and then we had to take our 2-year-old to the ER 2 nights ago for what turned out to be RSV.
Yuck.
So 104 fever,
Yuck.
180 BPM heart rate. Just real light, casual stuff.
Scary. In the middle of the night, did you go?
We had to pick him up from school.
Gotcha.
We took him in the early afternoon, and he'd kind of woken up from his nap and wasn't acting himself, and super shallow breathing and all of those normal symptoms. So we've had to have him on. Oh, he also had a double ear infection on top of that. So
Of course,
got
why
him
not?
on antibiotics for the ear infection. Ended up we're having to put him on a nebulizer with albuterol every 4 to 6 hours just to help his lungs.
Poor buddy.
He's not stoked on the whole situation. So, so we're in the middle of that. Shell, I think we talked about her injuring her knee, right? Did we not talk about that? We went on vacation when we were in Mexico.
I think I knew it from social media, but I don't think we talked about it.
My wife is an excellent volleyball player. And when we were in Mexico, there was a pickup game happening. She jumped in. She was crushing it. Went for a save, went to dig to save a ball, and dislocated her kneecap.
No.
And so that kind of put a damper on on every day since then. It's been hard for her to walk and be comfortable. And we were having a hard time seeing if was it like an MCL tear? Was it like cartilage? Meniscus, what was it? And
Did she hear a pop?
she didn't hear a pop, which
No.
is, good sign. But she was able to get in like a week after we got back from Mexico, but then couldn't get an MRI until yesterday. So basically she was able to get an x-ray a few weeks ago and be like, there's nothing broken. And that's all we can tell you. And so it looks like it's cartilage damage based on the initial feedback we've received. So hopefully it's basically a coin flip on whether surgery would actually be beneficial.
They're kind of trending away from surgery.
Yeah,
To see-
more
they-
PT.
Yeah, they
Just
say
see
it
if
kind of
you can-
settles. I tore my cartilage in my knee skiing the last time we skied.
Yep.
And they say it kind of finds its way and kind of settles back in often,
Yep.
which was the case for me.
Yeah.
And it hurt like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we're going
It's like
on
6 months of therapy, though.
No, I didn't go to 6 months of therapy.
I know, but like you did, you're
Right.
you know
Right.
how to do it. Like
Right.
you did.
No, it took a
therapy
while
on
to
it.
heal,
Yeah.
but I didn't have to
Yeah.
have surgery.
Right.
And it kind of, I would say, is fine.
Hey, you should text my wife.
I will.
If for no other reason than the encouragement of, hey, I managed to get
Yep.
past this without anyway, doctor may follow up and be like, it's bad enough that we need to repair it. But anyway, it's incredibly discomfort. There's a tremendous amount of discomfort,
Oh.
and it is it's just disruptive. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
disruptive
it's
to our
such a
lives.
bummer.
So
Yep.
anyway,
Sorry about that, man.
that's okay. That's okay.
I remember when I hurt mine, I was like, the fact that I can't do things fast
Yeah.
is so disruptive.
Oh yeah.
Because whereas I would do 50 things, I can only do 12.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was so life disruptive. Just not being able to move around quickly.
Well, and this is everyone we've told this to has laughed because it's like, oh yeah, tell us about that, you mid-30s people. But the neuromuscular phenomena of my body knows how to do this thing. I have the physical memory of how to do this thing.
It doesn't want to do it anymore.
And I go to do this thing and my body tells itself to do it and then just doesn't do it the same way. And it's like, how many tens of thousands of times has she dug for a volleyball, right? But this one time, it's like your body didn't move the way you expected it to. You hit the ground weird. You dislocated your kneecap. And you go to sprint and your body remembers how to run and you tear your hamstring because your body is just not what it was 15 years ago.
Yep.
So anyway, this was very disheartening for her.
Yeah, welcome to the physical gradual decline of midlife.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. It's like we were joking with our friends who were 45 talking about that. They're like,
Hey,
oh
the
yeah,
longer
tell me
we
how
do
bad
this,
it is.
The longer we do this podcast, the more we're going to devolve into all of our bodily ailments.
Yeah, it's really just us sitting on the front porch, just like complaining about everything. Very little marriage talk, more get off my lawn.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, all right, honey. The book.
Let's do it. The book. So the book is Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. According to the New York Times, it's a hands-on strategy to divide tasks and achieve household harmony. It was written out of a context in which Eve, she kind of tells her story.
She sort of lived the problem.
Yes.
She lived the very problem she eventually sought to solve.
Right. And the problem was she
and her husband
she's
were
a competent, she's a
dual
competent,
professionals.
dual professionals, Ivy League educated, both lawyers. They fall in love, get married, and then they have kids.
Yeah, I was going to say things were going swimmingly until they had kids.
And then, by the way, happiness metrics when you have kids. If you're having kids right now, just know the happiness metrics, they go down, but it's only for 18 years, and then they come back up again. If you've seen those, they're pretty funny.
But if you have multiple kids, then you have to accommodate for the time between kids in years.
Right.
So it's probably in the 20 something to 30 years
Right.
before they come back up.
Mm-hmm. So be encouraged. But but not really.
I think you should add the reason we chose this book was because I wanted to do it. Because I think in my circles, in my relationships, friendships, this is a huge issue for women.
Yes.
In anecdotally with the people who I'm around a lot.
And I first heard about this this was read by some of my female coworkers here on staff. They read it and was helpful, I think interesting, helpful in many respects for them. So I was curious about it myself from their perspective too.
If you guys could, if there was a visual, if you could see Dave, he just looks nervous. He just looks terrified of this conversation.
So
He has this, like, I call it his deer in the headlight look, where he's like, I don't know what's
A
coming.
bit of a pallor.
Yeah.
Just,
Yep.
well, let's get into it then.
Voice
So,
cracking.
Eve-
Your body betrays you, Dave.
I'm doing my thing.
You're touching your ear in
in
the
that
weird way.
Yeah. So
Premise. What's her premise?
so she's married to a good guy, and they have kids, and she understands for the initial part of having babies that I'm going to be home. I'm going to take the lion's share of household work, and she's fine with that. And then she is caught off guard when she begins to work again, that her husband's assumption of her continuing doing all of the household tasks, that assumption is there. And then there seems to be an inability of her otherwise competent husband for him to see and to recognize everything that she's doing on top of working.
Right.
And it caused a ton of tension for them. And she said put their marriage kind of on the brink. And she grew up, her mom was she grew up in a single parent household. Her mom worked her tail off.
She called her super mom.
She was a super mom. And she thought growing up, I never want to be in this position that my mom's in where she has to do everything.
I'm going to have a competent partner.
Yes.
And then lo and behold, she finds herself.
She has a competent partner,
Right,
but then
but she still
now she finds herself in this situation that an otherwise good person is ignoring this huge part of what she does.
And I think you should broaden it, though. It's not just in the home makes it sound like it's tasks that make their life work. So it's not all in the home.
Right.
Sometimes a lot of it's outside the home.
Right.
It's organizing, plan. I mean, we'll talk about the acronym she comes up with,
Yeah.
but it's actually mostly outside the home,
But it's things I like
related to your life.
related to your life.
Yeah, because when you say in the home, it's like dishes, laundry,
Right.
And that was part of it, but a small percentage of it actually.
Yeah. It's everything outside of just your direct employment
Right. That contributes to the functioning of your life.
and well-being.
Yeah, life and family.
Yes.
Yep.
And so she recognized her husband became more and more sort of fixated on just this one aspect of his life,
His job.
and seemingly at times incapable of being able to take on anything else. Meanwhile, she is taking on more and more and more. So she coins a number of terms I think are fascinating. One is she coins this term invisible work, where
Or also known as mental load.
mental load, and these are terms that in our conversations over the years, you've used the term mental load a lot. Invisible work. Well, help me think. What was another? She had another phrase that was interesting. I don't have it written down here.
S, I do.
Well,
All the
yeah.
S I do.
Yeah, she kind of got fed up,
Yeah.
and
Well, I think her relationship was at the breaking point. Felt like it was at the breaking point.
yeah, where she felt so devalued
Yeah.
in what she was doing. This is why I love the phrase invisible work. I'm doing all this stuff, but none of it's being seen. None of it's being appreciated.
But I think even all the conversations we've had around this for years, I still don't think it clicked, even with you, who you're a good guy and you want to help. But I still don't think, I think it took, so basically she just started making an actual list of
Called
called I do.
Yes.
Are we going to have to go back and
Yeah.
bleep that? Bleep, bleep.
We've never discussed this. I'm not particularly opposed to it, but
That's
if we
okay.
want to bleep it, we can bleep
Okay.
it.
let's have our first bleep.
I'm going to bleep the out of that.
Yes. Okay.
But
I didn't
so
actually say it.
She
but
started
I'm going to bleep it.
she started compiling not just the task, but sort of all of the components of all of the tasks. And she solicited input from everyone she knew. So she's creating this master list of all the stuff she does.
Yes. And it goes viral.
Yes.
It resonates with women, not just sort of in her community, but around the country and around the world. Suddenly,
And
she's
around the
getting,
universe.
yeah, that's right. Suddenly, she's getting these like impassioned emails from women from all over the world saying, "I'm invisible. I'm doing all this work. None of this is being appreciated by my spouse." So she's hitting a nerve
Yeah.
and showing where there's is an incredible felt need.
So when you read all of that, because the first part, when we talked about this, I'd listened to half of it, I think, the first half, and you're like, "What do you think?" And it made me really resentful and a little sad, and sad. I think that's been a huge part of our reality. But it was written in such a way that you feel the unfairness, and she uses the word fair a lot in the book.
Yeah. And to differentiate from equal,
Right, right.
which is
So when
kind
you
of
were reading
interesting.
all that stuff, what was your emotional?
Well, it was helpful for me.
Like as she's listing all the tasks and
No, I think it's I think it's helpful to shine a light on all of work that's being done that can, in the day in day out, can just be overlooked
yeah,
and not appreciated. And so I liked that she did that, and felt guilt. Okay, how many times, how much? Immediately I apply it to our own marriage. How many tasks and sort of acts of service last week does Renee do that's totally unappreciated, overlooked, not even acknowledged? And even as you're doing it, no one's going to see this. And yet I've done a great job on X, Y, and Z. And so to me, I felt immediate guilt. And then defensive, it's then
Right.
defensiveness.
Right.
Well, it's not like I'm sitting around, just watching TV, doing whatever I want to do. I'm working, I'm working too, and then
Right.
it's like, we're
Which was
both in this
exactly her
together.
husband's sort of posture too.
He said the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
He said the same thing.
I do think it was helpful. She so she compiled all this information and then decided to do something about it.
Well, she compiled it, and then she realized
It wasn't helpful.
it wasn't helpful if you want to foster a healthy marriage, that just highlighting all the things you do that isn't appreciated is not the way to do it.
Right.
It creates further division and ironically creates
Resentment.
And then husbands, whatever involvement they do have, they become less involved. They then pull back, and then it sort of reinforces the superwoman thing, that the very thing she didn't want. And so she's like, I've hit a nerve. I'm onto something. How do I create a system that welcomes the husband into the process without making him feel like an idiot or an a-hole or a doofus?
Yeah. I thought she had a lot of interesting terms that I hadn't heard before. She-fault instead of default, which that's so true. Like often when things arise, the default is that she does it.
Yeah, it's the she-fault parent.
The unspoken expectation.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I was just looking through my notes to see like any comments on just kind of that part of it.
The unspoken expectation that if you're the wife, you're the mom, you're just gonna do this aspect of our life without even us ever really talking about it.
Yeah, she said even,
culture wide,
right?
Not just individually, but like the expectation of culture. That she-fault parent.
Even the most well-intended men, and she doesn't. I don't think she bashes men.
She tries not to.
She tries not to, but she said even the most well-intended men are actually not doing their fair share at home.
And I think that's probably true. Like, I think if you press into it, that's probably true.
Yeah.
I did think, though, and again, this may be motivated by defensiveness, so take it with a grain of salt. There are these other surveys that show, they ask siblings who kind of, what sibling sort of had it best growing up. And doesn't matter what sibling you ask, more times than not, they always choose the other person. So
like grass is always browner on the other side.
That they had it worse.
Right.
And that their sibling had it better. Yeah.
It's not greener on their side, it's browner.
Right, on their own side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So grass is greener on
the other side.
the other side. True. Yeah. And a part of the human condition, it is true that we talked about this a few weeks ago. We can make it
like overinflate our hardship.
Yes. And then create sort of a perpetrator out there.
I do think though, when she starts, we'll discuss what her solution is.
Yeah.
But when she actually starts going through them in excruciating detail, task by task, it sort of eliminates that.
Yeah.
Because it's objective.
Right.
Like you literally hold a certain number of cards in your hand and you can see how many one person is holding versus how many the other person's
Right.
holding. So even if she comes in with a little bit of that inflated angst, sort of, I think how she goes about it debunks it a bit.
She builds a remarkable case filled with facts
Yeah.
and like I think objective reality. So even though there might be like a posture or a tinge of it, I think her actual case is compelling.
So what she does, or do you have anything else?
No.
Essentially what she does is she creates a game with 4 ground rules. And the ground rules are all time is equal, which you can kind of extrapolate what that means, but it doesn't matter if you're at work in a high power meeting or you're vacuuming the basement floor. The value of time is equal,
Yes.
regardless of what you're doing.
Yes. So, honey, I don't have time for that.
But you
Because-
do.
But you clearly do.
But you
yeah.
but you have
But
time.
you do,
because
because
your
you're-
time is
Yes.
more expendable.
Yes. She calls it toxic time messages. And I do think within marriages, that's ubiquitous. Mm-hmm. You have the time to do that. I don't have the time to do it. My time's the message, more important than your
yeah,
time.
Yep.
Okay, well, what does that communicate to your spouse when you really believe that? So I think that the first rule is really powerful. It emphasizes, I think, biblical concept of imago Dei and worth and value, of each person within the marriage, and wars against the perversion of that can be manifest in classic hierarchical relationships,
Yeah.
where certain people feel like their time and their presence and their being is just more important than other people.
And actually, biblically, it would be the reversed. I mean, if you
Husband
want,
gives up of his time.
no, the more important tasks are the servant, the one who's not seen,
right.
the one who's menial,
Yes.
the one. So if you theologically, it's actually her time is probably more valued
Yes.
than whatever he's doing at his job. or
Whatever is praised by the world.
Right,
Whatever.
right.
Yeah. So I love that. I love that rule. I feel like there's so much biblical wisdom that, even though it's secular, there's so much wisdom. In
Okay,
that.
number 2 was as a rule for the game or the system, reclaim your right to be interesting, the unicorn space. I thought this was interesting.
I am curious to get you and we haven't debriefed
Yeah.
this book because we both finished it this morning.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think about that? I really liked this, even though I think there's kind of a terrible message baked in it as well.
It seemed like, so unicorn space is find what you used to love and that made you light up, or that drove you, or that made you sparkle. I think
Yeah.
she even used
Remember
letters.
back when you were interesting and
Remember when
fun-loving?
cool and not an old cranky married mother.
Yeah.
And reclaim that.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's this one made me sad, kind of, because I think there are times I do feel like I'm boring and not interesting, and because when you have to do all the stuff, you just have to do all the stuff, and it's not. Honey, let me tell you about that load of laundry today.
Yeah.
It was I mean, like, what do you say?
Yeah.
So I think it made me sad, and I think unrealistic at times that you can devote a lot. Where are you going to muster up the energy to go refine your unicorn space?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that should be a focus. Maybe my cynicism is clouding my ability to see where I'm a unicorn.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. What'd you think about it?
I liked it for maybe slightly different reasons than why she highlights it.
Because she was saying, to be your best self, to be your most. She was using a lot of that pop psychology
Yeah.
jargon, to be most actualized, to be. That was kind of the motivation for this.
Yeah, and I suppose what I didn't like about it, or kind of the subtle message, is that she's saying there's not value in doing those tasks.
I think she would say there's not value in only having those tasks.
Yeah, but I think the message is, or at least what I sensed, even why when I read it, I thought this might make you sad. Mm-hmm. Is that, to me, I think she's not meaning to, but I do think she's diminishing the actual sacredness and value of those, talking about serving, those servant tasks. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned folding laundry, you made a meal last night where you made that marinara sauce from scratch. That was it was a holy experience.
Oh, Dave's getting teary. Don't get teary. Oh, honey.
It was.
Oh, dear. We need to move on. We need to move on. Dave's
Let the sweet man be sweet, Renee.
No, it was a holy experience.
Oh, gosh, honey.
And sorry. I feel like to say, in order to become interesting, you have to do something beyond that. Now, we're made in God's image, and so we are there are various aspects of our personality that need to be explored.
Right.
So I like what she said, but I thought, man, the sacredness of those tasks that she wants to be delineated.
Yeah.
I just don't think was being really valued.
Yeah. And this was her main, this is the final chapter. This was her main point.
Yeah.
Like her take home was the unicorn card is the most important card.
Right.
Like that was chapter 11.
And another subtle message that actually wasn't that subtle for me is, you wives, you better be interesting or your husband's going to leave you. I.e., you better do something beyond sort of the traditional mother thing and wife thing, or else your husband's not going to think you're interesting, and then he may leave you like he left this woman who she highlighted in one of these chapters. And
but I think that's a reality. There's a reality that women are treated like they're indentured servants, and they're not interesting.
Of course.
So even though it shouldn't be that way, it doesn't mean it isn't.
Absolutely. And so this is why I actually appreciate, I think, the heart behind the unicorn space, which is the wife and the husband should advocate for every aspect of your personality and your gifting.
Right. To
and
flourish.
Explore that together and create a context or an environment where that can be fostered. So when I hear her say unicorn space, really it's just, you have to value and carve out time to do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do because of the daily realities of life.
And I think in the end, she advocates, if you don't have time for this, you need to offload some of the tasks, some of the cards.
Right. And I think that's true. I mean, I think about, we'll get into some of the other rules, but
let's go through these real quick. The other ones aren't quite as loaded. Start where you are. Start where you find yourself.
So it's that principle that you can't apply 20 new habits all at once. Got to start with one.
Start where you are.
That's doable.
And then she talked a lot about really getting clarity on shared values, which I think could speak to what you're upset about. Because if you both, it's like, we value delicious, healthy food that's lovingly prepared as a way to love each other, then that could communicate that that's a real value, not just something to do to get to something else.
Right.
So shared values and minimal standard of care were two. I think she lumped those together in the fourth, which is, you talk about, why is this important that we do this in our familial ecosystem, and what does it look like for this to be done in a way that we're both comfortable with?
Right.
And I think that's an area that we've had conflict.
Definitely, but because of the disconnect between the value and the execution of the task.
Right.
So I love that rule because a value just means, and it's a shared value.
Right.
We both agree.
We want this in our family to be this. And I mean, it's silly things like, I like the house tidy because we want a home that people can flourish in and that is it enjoyable to be in, and that other people can be welcomed into it without it just being chaos.
Right. And like we value education. And so we make sacrifices to do other things in order to highlight the importance of education for our boys and for us in constantly learning. And so we sort of build our life and structure decisions that we make that may be baffling to others, but it's not to us because we have that shared value. And then to then connect that with individual tasks, I think the tasks that don't often get done or where there's a ton of frustration is where there's mismatched values.
Or mismatched minimal standard. Because I did
talk about minimal standard of care. I think that's
when I
read that, I was like,
I did this in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Without even knowing, like a few years ago, we talked about, hey, it is unfair that, talk about fair for me to do all the planning, prepping, shopping, cooking, and then have to be in the kitchen first. So we all stay and clean up the kitchen afterwards. And I quickly realized that you guys needed to know what I meant when I said clean the kitchen. So I typed it out and laminated it, and it's still on our refrigerator. And it's what, 25 steps, and it's excruciating detail. But it was so helpful.
And now what's fascinating, when's the last time that any one of our boys have looked at those steps?
Yeah, it's been years. It's been years.
It's internalized because
But that's an apologetic for her.
No,
for her method. Because I actually did what she's saying to do inadvertently.
Right.
As far as talked about the value and the minimal standard of care, I was like, this is what this looks like to be done well.
Right.
And to be done to the expectation of me.
And I'm agreeing with that. And
right.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I was just saying that if there happens to be a task where there's not that value share,
right,
then there's frustration there.
But she says hash it out on the front end.
Yes.
And come to an agreement. Like
you walked through it. This is what I expect.
Yeah. And
we've already have this value, and now we're going to execute it.
And if it's unreasonable, which I think sometimes it is, like some of my expectations are unreasonable, how to come to something that is a reasonable, like what were her criteria to, if there's a discrepancy in the minimal standard of care.
Yeah, so she calls it the reasonable person standard, which is kind of interesting. So if it's not done, does it cause harm?
Yeah. And
if it's not done, does it violate
a value?
Yeah.
This is a silly example, but a true one. So when I fold, so in our closet, we have like these cubbies in the middle that you can stack clothes. And so Dave has a sweatshirt cubby, right? And so when you fold the sweatshirt, if you think of, if you fold it, one side is the folded side and one side is the sticking out two ends of the sweatshirt side, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think of how those look stacked, you see what I'm saying? Are you following me?
I think so.
Okay. So if all of the folded sides are out, they're stacked really neatly. Mm-hmm. But if it's turned the other way, then the arms are coming out, and then the bottom of the two sides of the sweatshirt are coming out.
I'm curious.
It's a little sloppy.
It's sloppy.
I'm a little. Now we're getting into the like.
No, this is why I'm using this as an example.
Yeah. Do you like? Here, let me see your sweatshirt. Yeah.
We're gonna do a visual.
Okay. I was gonna say because we're getting into how do you fold sweatshirts.
Well, I know. But the reason I say this is because I literally tell you, like, hey, when you put the sweatshirt here, let me show you. Okay.
Here's the thing right now. Here's the thing already. I zip my sweatshirts so I fold them the way I would a t-shirt.
Right. Okay. Let's say a hoodie.
Even hoodie. Yeah.
Okay, so you do this, and then you fold it, right? So then you have this like neatly this side.
Sure.
And then you have this side.
Yeah, of course.
So if this side is sticking out.
Yeah.
And it's all stacked,
mm-hmm.
it's harder to get more sweatshirts in there, and it just looks really sloppy.
Sure.
So that was. So I've asked you a couple times, like, hey, can you just make sure this side, which is a little. I think that is not a reasonable like it should be okay for you to put the sweatshirt in facing the other way.
Right.
If we use that criteria to dissect that request.
Right. And so that kind of fits under like preference. And then like it's
But if you didn't want to do it, you could probably say, "Hey, this isn't reasonable."
Yeah,
this
if
is
I
like,
wanted to push really
if you
push
want to push
back,
back on
yeah.
it.
yeah. Well, like what's the harm?
Right.
The importance is the actual clarifying the expectation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is where so much disappointment. There's like a very old adage, right?
Yeah.
Like disappointment comes from unmet expectations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
like
But
Yeah.
another value that we've had is we pick up the boys from school on time. We don't let them just. Our kids aren't going to be the kids that are just waiting around
Yeah.
for mom and dad to show up.
Yeah.
Hope it like
We're there early because I want them to feel secure and loved and
sure.
emotionally just contribute emotionally to them in that way.
so the task is a particular way we do pick up, and the value and so how it's executed is that you're always on time or a little early, and if it's violated, well, it violates a value that we have,
Right.
Because it does harm, we think, to the boys
Yeah.
if we're not there
Right.
on time,
Right.
and so the reasonable person standard,
Yeah, it
it's
holds.
a strike against
It holds.
both of those.
Yep,
It
yep.
does harm.
Yep.
And it goes against our shared values.
Yeah, I thought that was a really, really good, which couples and families probably do that intuitively on some things.
Yes.
I think she's just systematized a way to do it on all the things so that there's clarity surrounding, because where couples feel rub is probably a misalignment, right? On who thinks what's valuable and who thinks it's not valuable.
Right.
So essentially, what she does is she creates a game of 100 actual cards, and in the book, she goes through every single task, all of them. Which I was like, is she really going to talk through?
It's like you get comfortable.
Yeah, and she
Get your
divides it. I
popcorn.
can't
Get
remember
some tea.
I can't remember the categories. Like in the home, outside the home.
There's like a wild card.
Wild card or
for, like,
things like
flat
unexpected,
tires and
unexpected things.
Stuff like that.
But long story short, she wants you and your spouse to sit down and go through every single card and one person take it.
Yes.
And
And how many does she have in her house?
there's 100,
I know, but how many did she take? Do you remember?
60 something. Was it?
87.
That's right. Because she kept saying, my name is Eve and I have 87 cards. Well, and I have to be honest, I think I would probably almost have all of them.
Yeah, you would have.
Almost 100. The only IT, there was an
Yeah.
IT card
Thank God for IT.
that if the computer goes down or if whatever, you're the one that does it. That was the only one as she's going through them that I think I don't do.
Yeah, so to me, this is where I kind of had some issues with it
Mm-hmm.
because I would say a lot of those cards, I don't know about most, but a lot of those, I'm a key part of how she understands the process of the card. So
This was crucial to her. So she calls it CPE.
yes,
So it's
Conception.
planning, and execution. And she gave a good example of, it was a couple she was working with, and the husband was like, I cook dinner every night. And then she dug in deeper because he was like, what's she complaining about? I cook dinner every night. But he didn't plan, he didn't shop, he didn't organize, he just showed up and actually
did the
cooked it,
cook- yeah.
which actually was a fraction of that task.
Right.
It was a small fraction of that task.
right.
So I think even just breaking tasks out into seeing all the components, that was useful.
It's very helpful just to appreciate all of the effort that goes into it, which
Right.
then goes back to highlighting invisible work,
Right.
which I love.
Right.
So, but then what she advocates for that I don't like.
So basically she wants you to print these off and sit down and you divvy them up.
Yes.
And she's not advocating for 50-50 because some tasks obviously take a lot of time and some don't or
Right.
whatever. She's saying equal. She wants equitable, not equal.
Yeah, fairness. Like,
Yeah.
let's make this be appropriate for
Yeah.
what it should be, so that you're not being taken advantage of,
Right. Or that
taken for granted.
or that there's if it's disproportionate inequity, then
or inequality.
if it's inequitable, then in the game, the person who is doing the disproportionate amount of work offloads some of those so that they have room for the three happiness things.
Yeah,
the
the happiness trio.
the happiness trio, which is self-care,
friendship.
adult friendships, and the unicorn thing. Yeah. So did it scare, like, did you ever think, like, we should sit down and do this with these tasks?
Well, I
Like, should
would
actually
I think it would be probably good for us to go through that process.
yeah.
Even though I do quibble with, so she advocates that whoever has the card is responsible for all three parts of the process.
There's no sharing.
There's no sharing.
Because it's confusing. Things get dropped, things get lost, things get doubled. She really drives that point home.
Yeah. So if you hold a card, you do the thinking work on it, you plan it, and you execute it. And so if you're, let's say, like for dinner, for example, you've come up with the menu, you plan, get the groceries, and you're responsible to execute it.
Yeah, and if you forgot, like, let's say I forgot carrots, I shouldn't call my spouse and say, "Can you bring home carrots?" Because that's my card.
Yes. So that eliminates the, honey, can you just get whatever?
She calls them rats.
Yes. What's the?
It's random assignment of tasks.
Which is a frustration in marriage, where it's like, he's always asking me to do this thing, and I'm doing something else.
Right. Well, and she used the example. She called her husband and asked him to pick up something at the grocery store. Oh, glue. Glue for like a project. That it was her card to manage the school projects. Like, it's shocking, the detail. Like, she's thought through. I just thought that there were some tasks she had. I was like, man, we should start doing that. We don't even do that. And she said, can you just pick up the glue? So he forgot and came home without the glue, and she was livid because he forgot. But it wasn't his card. So she should have just gone out and gotten the glue.
Right.
Instead, because it created tension because she just threw rats at him.
Yeah. So this is where I think this commitment to the system works against the reality of life. I don't want to ever be in a scenario where you feel like you can't call me to get the glue, or a scenario where I would get mad at you, where I think, I have the stuff that I'm doing. Why are you asking me to do the stuff that you're doing?
It doesn't feel gracious. It doesn't feel like there's graciousness.
She says her system works against tit for tat, but I wonder in the execution of it if it does create territory within a marriage. And it's fascinating. If you look at the cover of the book, there's actually scales, and it's balancing scales. And so I think that's a fair description of what she's describing. She's describing how do we find balance, which balance is constantly like, do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that. There's that constant movement, and if you're always trying to find the right balance as kind of a crazy maker, I think a better metaphor is harmony, or peace, or shalom, which is we own everything together, and so I never think, oh, that's Renee's sort of task. I'm gonna be resentful or begrudgingly help her with it if she needs me to do something. And so I think doing this exercise would be helpful to highlight all the things that are actually being done, and to help bring competence.
Yeah. So I guess you just compare the downsides.
Right.
So is the downside of that, which I think is one, worse than the downside of a complete unequal distribution of tasks?
No, because I think then the spouse, the wife in this instance, is diminished and taken advantage of and not appreciated.
Right.
And there's nothing good about that.
Right.
That then would build eventually resentment.
Right.
You know, and then malice and all the things we talked about with the Gottman stuff. Like
Right. She
that's where
quotes the Gottmans.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that's where the real like division and
Yep.
divorce and all that
Yep,
stuff.
right.
The seeds of that are planted there.
She gave a statistic that she said I thought was really interesting, that 43% of highly educated professional women have a career derail after having kids.
43%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of in some ways our story,
Totally.
because COVID played into this too, but for us it was just easier for me just to be at home for a bit and just do all of it instead of going through this and figuring out, which we're going to have to do at some point because I'm going to have to go back to work full time.
Right.
At some juncture. So it made me think of, that's a huge number. And I wonder the percentage of men who take a career derailment after having kids. I mean, what the percentage is.
Yeah. It's very small.
Right.
I would
Right.
guess. I'm sure there's a number out there, but
Yeah.
But single digits.
But that
for
was
sure.
shocking to me that almost half.
Yeah. And then the real sacrifice when there's the career derailment, and this is a discussion that we've had a lot,
Right.
is every year you're out of the workforce.
Right. Right.
You're further and further behind.
Right.
And so now when the boys are out of the house, you're like, well, I was a working professional, 10 years ago, but now where are my opportunities?
Right.
And that's where I really do like creating that unicorn space to not just for career and vocational development, but for pursuing those personal interests and passions that then can be leveraged towards work potentially, some kind of income producing activity.
Yeah.
When those responsibilities are shifted from rearing these children to now, okay, they're more independent now. How am I going to contribute?
Yeah, but I think it was a lot more than just kids, because I think 60 of the cards are applicable if you don't have kids,
Right.
And all 100 are with kids. So it's not just with children. It's life management as it's managing a life as a unit,
Right.
Not just. I mean, I think we minimize it when we just like attach it to the kids.
True. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that's just kind of, so where so much of our focus is right now. It's hard for me not just to kind of
Right.
immediately think
Right.
that.
Yeah. I think you find a book helpful in as much as it relates to where you are. I mean, I thought what she did was brilliant. And I think a lot of people won't like it because it shakes things up. And I think it probably is nice to be the one that all the things are done for.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
I mean, I was even thinking about, we talked about this a little bit, but what you inherited as role expectations, you are far beyond that.
Right.
I mean, what was modeled for you is in some ways to me shocking.
Right.
At the like patriarchalness of the home roles.
Right.
And in some ways demeaning role of the mom and wife, whatever.
Yeah. So
I think there's some things are inherited, but I do think there's a cultural component too. And this is a scenario that plays out in every country and every culture.
Right.
So I think unless, I don't know, I think just perpetuating this is not going to create healthy relationships. And in a lot of ways, it breaks up relationships.
Totally does. Yeah.
So I think even though it may not be fun. I don't think it was fun for you to read this.
No, but it was helpful.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of the Boundaries book. Mm-hmm. In that it's actually creating a framework for agency.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In marriage, so that you don't just kind of slide into these roles and all of a sudden you realize I'm doing all this stuff that's not even valued. Mm-hmm. How do I stop? Like, I've got to stop this.
Right.
Like, how do I? And so, how do we begin to? So they rather than language of barriers, she creates a game.
Yeah, it's an actual game.
Yeah,
And she has a lot of like, so if this happens, do this, and like a lot of practical problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, essentially, it's just sitting down and you go through the cards and you divvy them up and you see what happens. And then she advocates meeting weekly, which seems overkill. Because once you take a card, I mean, I'm not going to get in the weeds of the rules of the game because I don't think that's really important. It does seem to me that it would be it seemed very overbearing to do the whole thing on an ongoing basis. It seems like very time consuming, very tedious, because some tasks just are fine and there's not problems. It seems like you could take the concept with areas where there's a lot of tension and maybe just have a few cards that represent things that are causing a lot of problems.
Yes.
Instead of every week go through all 100 and trade them or whatever.
right. Figure out where are the tension points. Okay, let's go through this. What is everything involved with the CPE? Let's be clear on it, and then let's decide together.
Yep.
Who's going to own it,
Yep.
and then it's going to be a shared value. You're going to have the rules of the game. There's a discussion about this is the reason why we do this. Do we agree on that or not? And so, I always think there's this phrase I heard a long time ago where it said that a task without a vision is a burden. And so if people just view this game as just the assignment of just tasks,
Right.
then it's just going to be a burden. It's just no one's going to play a burden.
Well, and she
game.
says it's not a tit for tat like comparing card numbers either.
Right.
That's not the purpose of it.
Right.
Or to shame someone else. The purpose is to actually create harmony and to create a mutually an environment that facilitates mutual flourishing in the perspective of both people.
Yeah. And I think she's done a service in culture, sort of broadly, by writing this book.
So, do you have any other parting shots?
No, I think it's important. I think it's worth reading.
Do you think we're going to do it? Are we going to do the cards?
I don't think we're gonna.
I mean, just
I
once.
would be willing.
Do it once.
All 100.
Well, I mean, I feel like if you kind of get a framework for I think you could do it once and it would be enormously helpful without making it weekly and like this thing. Because then there's just a clarity, like my list in the kitchen that's laminated. There's just an established clarity that's been spoken out loud and known.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm game to do it. I'm game to
You
play
don't
the
look
game. I wonder if we have a couple of hours, if we can go through those cards and then maybe list what are the 10 or the 15 that are most felt. So we go through them.
I think I would like to do them all.
Okay, then let's do it.
Okay. We'll give you an update.
Yeah, we'll do it.
We'll
do a little
update.
Yeah.
See how this goes.
So, but in terms of rating of the book, I mean, I give it 8.5.
Yeah, I think I'm 9.5. I think it's just where we are, and I think where we've always been.
Yeah.
Kind of relationally, and
I'm curious how some of you know Renee and I are going to be doing this like life planning week-long
what
thing.
do I want to be when I grow up?
Yeah.
What do we want to be when we grow up?
The whole
Counseling, intensive counseling.
the whole purpose of that exercise is for us to have like shared meaning behind what's next for our life.
Right.
And I can't wait for that. But I see that entire exercise as doing one of the rules for this game, which is, what is it that we value? What are we called to? What's our meaning? Sort of the direction of our life in this next stage. I feel like once there's clarity on that, then divvying up all of the realities and all the tasks associated with doing our life, there's like a fresh foundation there.
I don't know. I feel like we should do this before, because the presence of these sometimes inhibits the ability to get anywhere else. So
I'm happy to do it. We already have a week already set aside. 2 weeks, actually.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
All right. We'll keep you updated. Oh, honey, I don't think you liked this one.
No, well, she made me cry.
She made me cry too. I just didn't cry on the podcast. All right, let's shift.
Okay.
Let's shift to the surprise question.
All right. I have a surprise question for you, Renee.
Let's go light.
Okay.
I'm requesting light.
So, we kind of have a ongoing, it's sort of a joke. There's some tension in the house around, like wrinkle reducing creams, age reducing sort of,
So,
beauty products.
I mean, it's just like Target moisturizer mostly.
Right. Or like just lotion.
Just lotion. No, don't think I'm buying expensive
So
anti-aging creams.
if our youngest sees any cream or lotion that has like the word age or wrinkle in it, what does he do, Renee?
He morphs into a different personality and acts like that he's going to kill me.
And then he literally hides
Yes.
these very expensive products.
Well, they're not that expensive.
Like
it's
$20.
like it's like eye cream from
Right. But it's like
Target.
$20 or
Right,
something.
right,
That's
right.
expensive to me.
Very expensive.
That's
Yeah.
expensive to
So-
me.
Don't ever take this man to Ulta.
Yeah, you're right. So if I want to get his goad, I'll joke about, and I'm not. Everybody.
Okay, so here's this
Is your question? Everybody has. I have no judgment on people who do Botox. It's the thing for particularly women in my age. You do you, people. It's just not going to probably be something that I do. But if I want to get Beckett fired up, I'll say to him, "I'm just going to go do Botox then."
Okay, so this is a refrain.
So this happens
anytime
frequently.
anytime you say that, so it's kind of
You
like a
have to-
comedian.
Yeah,
It's,
go to the voice. Do it. Mimic him.
if you do Botox, Mom, I will get
You have no idea
what's coming after you.
Well,
Yeah, he will get fired up. But it's kind of like a
Amazing.
comedian. Like you make a joke.
Yeah.
But then there's often in jokes there's just a little grain of truth in it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so I do wonder, do you actually think you need Botox? Because sometimes I'm like, she's kidding. Uh-huh. I don't know if she's kidding.
Yeah,
And so here I am asking you on the podcast.
I think there's an enormous amount of pressure. We're in our 40s. There's an enormous amount of pressure on women to look 20, and what I hate
Which is insane.
It is, but it is a strong reality, and I don't know. I'm not going to do it. I can talk myself out of it, but there is an enormous pressure. I mean, you look at, I've seen side by sides of like, and I think Botox feels different than like facelift, like that kind of plastic surgery. And like Reese Witherspoon is my age, and like to show a picture of her, what she looks like, and a picture of what she would look like if she didn't do Botox. I mean, it's shocking, and I think there's a cultural pressure to do it. I feel very loved. I feel very accepted in our relationship, and I'm not in a profession that requires, like if I was a corporate lawyer or a news anchor, or there's professions that if you start looking old, you lose your job or you have less opportunities. So I don't know. I know, but yet there's pressure.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me that the language that you used is I can talk myself out of it as
know.
if it's the expectation.
It is the expectation. It is. Most of the people you know who are my age do Botox. Mm-hmm. And they're a different income bracket than we are. So if you have expendable income, they do.
Yeah.
And
Well-
they look younger. And they look younger in pictures. And that, it's like, it's a whole thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a strange contentment experiment to live in our society as a woman.
Yeah.
Because I think I would love to say XYZ. So you know who's done it is Jason Bateman's sister. Who was on, do you know who Justine Bateman is? She was on Family Ties.
Yeah.
Like she hasn't done.
She has overtly and publicly done nothing. And which I think takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And shows she's probably really comfortable with who she is and doesn't need sort of external physical validation. And what people say about her is brutal. It is brutal.
Hey, here's the counter to that though, because at what point, like where does it stop? Right?
It doesn't.
Because,
right.
well, I know, but this is my point. Gwen
Yeah.
Stefani gets spit roasted for the same thing,
Yeah.
for going the other direction.
Yeah, yeah.
People are absolutely crucifying her publicly because she doesn't look like the same person.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
so,
Right.
again, whether...
We can't win. We can't win.
well, and, which is that's kind of my question is like,
Yeah.
well, if you can't win either way, why throw all of this money into trying to falsify who you are?
I think that's where I am because I think from experience with friends, Botox looks great for a bit and then it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have to keep going.
Me, and then it starts looking weird.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I'm not going to go down that road because I don't think
No.
where people end up
Yeah.
is better.
Yeah.
But it does look good for a while. Looks about 10 years younger. And
Well,
I have this.
I'm here to say, Renee, you look great. And I think Beckett actually might kill you.
I know. I'm
If
I'm not doing Botox. But that's
Okay.
an interesting question. And that is a funny refrain at our house.
Yeah. So if anyone listens in, we talk about that a lot.
All right. Real quick, really quickly, how can I make your day better? I think I need to make your day better today.
Okay. So how you can make my day better? I do want, like, tomorrow or Friday, I want to just have a great day. Like I do. I want it to be relaxed. And so maybe like what I would want that would make my day better is for us to like pre-agree, hey, we're going to go out for lunch. We're not going to talk about how much it costs.
Okay.
And we're gonna just
Enjoy it. Okay.
we're gonna just enjoy it together.
Okay. When will this pre-agreement discussion happen?
Well,
Midnight tonight, apparently.
Midnight
like
tonight?
right now, yeah.
Okay. So those are the two criteria that we're just going to enjoy the day and we're going to go out to eat and I'm not going to worry about how much it costs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Okay.
Sushi Den do lunch? Garden Grace do lunch?
I predict Postino.
Yes.
I predict Postino by our house.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay.
Great.
I can do that.
Renee,
Yes.
what are you into?
Well, we just discovered this as we were coming in here because Dave got a phishing text that said,
Here it is. I'm reading it right now. Mike, this is Anna. Are you going to practice golf today?
so, and to which I said, I've really enjoyed.
By the way, you had my phone.
right, I had your phone.
Yeah, today to
Yeah, to
finish
listen to the
listening
book,
to
yeah.
the book. Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed responding to those phishing texts with really extreme hyperbolic responses. So I got one that said, Anastasia, I need an update on the finances. And I said, the finances are dead. So coming up with funny, creative, inflammatory responses it seems to put it into that particular thread.
I know it's really funny that you have that impulse. Like I love that that's what you're kind of into. Like I'm gonna,
Because I told Dave how to respond, and he just cracked up. What did I tell you to say?
I haven't responded
I took
yet.
the golf clubs and I killed my neighbor with them or something.
Well, I'm not going to say that.
Or just something. Or I don't have golf clubs anymore because I don't know, something
They
silly.
were confiscated by the cops.
Yeah.
Taken in as evidence.
They don't let you take golf clubs in prison or something. I don't know.
Well,
so funny.
I love that you're into responding to phishing.
Text.
I don't do it often. I did do it the other day. I saw a billboard that said this, and then like 3 days later, I got a text, and I was like, "Is this how far we've come? Is this how lazy we've gotten?" It's like inflation. Out or no, it wasn't even. I was like, it was fire Polis, vote Republican, and it's like. And in the text I responded, I was like, so explain to me how the governor of my state is responsible for the global supply chain.
Yeah.
I was like, please tell me how.
Did you say that?
Yeah, I just said because it was like tired of inflation in Colorado.
Fire Polis.
Fire Polis and vote Republican. And I was like, please tell me how my governor is responsible for the global supply chain. Thank you.
Did you get a response?
No response. Of course not. Of course not.
Well, I love that you're in that. It's endless fun.
It is endless fun. Levity to the weirdness of the day.
Yes.
All right, we've gone way too long.
We have.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it's been good. Mm-hmm. Look forward to playing this game with you.
And we have one more book for the season.
One more book.
One more book next week, the last book review.
Yes. And it's going to be an academic take on the state and future of Christian marriage.
So a different angle.
It's going to be the first book we've read in this series that's published by Oxford University.
Yeah.
Press.
And a more philosophical kind of State of the Union address.
Yeah. I think it'd be a good way to kind of wrap up this podcast series.
Okay.
Love it.
All right, bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.